Jodi, hello, and
Hello.
hello, and a very warm welcome to anyone who's clicked on this and is watching this. We really appreciate you doing that. Um, Let me start with a quick introduction of who I am. So I'm Tracy, and I run a company called Open Minds Mental Health. And our work is around training and support with people understanding more about mental health, and how they can stay well and help other people stay well. And one of the things that we see so much in our training, and one of the joys of our training, is people learning from each other's lived experiences of life and of mental health conditions. So we're creating some of these films so that you get to hear the conversations that I get the privilege to hear so often. And if you want to find out more about Open Minds or what we do, have a look at our website, www.openmindsmentalhealth.co.uk. Because I don't want to spend time telling you about that, I want to spend time talking to Jodi. So, morning, Jodi.
Morning.
Really appreciate you being here. So, look, I want to start first of all with asking you to share with us what your biggest passion is. What's the thing that gets you up in the morning? What's the thing you love most in life?
Um, Straight up, my dog. Like he quite literally gets me up in the morning, wakes me up at 5. But yeah, I love my dog. He gets me up in the mornings, gives me a reason to get out of bed, go on a dog walk. Animals, that's a big passion of mine. I'm vegan, so something that I feel quite strongly about. Yeah, music as well.
Okay, right, come on. So let's talk about your dog. What's his name?
His name is Dylan. He is a miniature cockapoo. He's a rescue. I've had him for 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like he's a practical get you out of bed as well as the emotional connection.
Yeah. I mean, when I rescued him, that was kind of a large part of the reason I wanted to get a dog was for mental health reasons.
Right.
Um, Nice having a little companion, that dogs make you happy. I've always wanted a dog. So yeah, that was a big part of it.
And music. What's your genre of music? And a listener or creator of?
I wish I was a creator. I'm a listener. I like alternative music, rock, metal, that type of thing. So many different genres, to be honest with you. But yeah, you can probably tell by the many tattoos that I'm into alternative music.
Brilliant. I think often we start conversations with who are you and what do you do, and I think understanding what people are excited by is actually a much more interesting way to find out when people say thank you, Jodi. Right, so I love the way that we are having this conversation because we were both waiting for a meeting to happen, weren't we, a few weeks ago, and got talking, and I was just hearing a bit about your life and just thought, do you know what, this is really interesting and this is stuff that I want other people to hear about. And so I think we started talking about the fact that you have some physical health challenges, don't you? Are you happy to share a bit about that with us?
Yeah, so I have ME, also known as chronic fatigue. So basically that means, in a nutshell, I'm extremely tired all the time.
Right.
Um, it's more than just being tired, it's all consuming, like wake up in the morning and it's like, ugh, like it's just every single aspect of my life is affected by it. It is very challenging to live with. I mean, there's as well as tiredness, there's many other things that come with it, insomnia. Some people get pain, food intolerances. There's
Right.
so many things. But I've had it for about 25 years, so
Wow.
a really long time. I think I was a teenager when I started experiencing uh, tiredness. Yeah, and I had a lot of like illness as a teenager. Um, and I had glandular fever, and that sort of is what started basically everything going downhill with my health. Yeah, it's been quite long.
And how long a period of time was it before it was understood what was going on for you?
It was quite a long time, to be honest, which sucks because I feel
Right.
like nowadays it's a lot, doctors are a lot more aware. But I think I was about 20, no, I wasn't 20. I was about 20, 23, 24. I think it was when I actually got diagnosed.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I would go to the doctors all the time because I knew there was something wrong and it wasn't normal to be that tired. Um, and I tried various doctors and it was, oh, it could be this, could be that, just constant blood tests, no real answers. And then I finally saw a different doctor, and she was the one that mentioned, oh, it could be chronic fatigue. Um, so then that's when I started exploring that avenue, and she eventually diagnosed me officially with chronic fatigue.
And did that make a difference for you receiving a diagnosis?
Yeah, it did because it I'm the type of person that when I have something uh wrong with me, whether it be physical, mental, whatever, I I want to fix it basically. So it gave me opportunity to start researching
Right.
what can I do. You know, I didn't really know much about it, so me and my parents had to do a lot of reading and figuring out where we went from there. So yeah.
And I think it's probably an obvious answer to this question, but did that have an impact on your mental health?
Um, I mean, the official diagnosis, maybe I don't think it made much of a difference, but the illness itself has definitely impacted my mental health. Um, it took me a very long time to come to terms with the fact that I had this. Um, I felt very angry at the world and very bitter. I mean, I was in my 20s, which is when you want to be out
Mm.
partying and socializing. Um, and I found it really hard that, I mean, I did still do those things. Um, and I would massively pay the price for that. And I just become very bitter about the fact that I had to go through that. And on the odd occasion, I would have to say no, that I couldn't go somewhere. And so I found that really hard. And I just got into a bit of a hole of I didn't know what to do because the doctors back then, they tell you you have this illness, but no one tells you how to get rid of it. Or, well, I was told you have it for life, basically. That's that. So I had to do that all off my own back. So it was very overwhelming, and it still is at times. So yeah, it did have a huge impact on my mental health.
Were you able to differentiate? Were there sort of signs that your mental health was struggling is distinct from your physical health condition? Do you remember there being a time where you felt like, do you know what, my head is in as much of or more of a mess than my body?
It's hard to tell because I have always suffered with anxiety as well.
Right, okay.
And I think without even knowing, when I was a teenager, I think I used to get social anxiety quite a lot.
Right.
So it, I mean, I had, when I was at uni as well, I had
You went to
depression.
uni?
I went to uni, yeah.
Wow, and got through the course.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Well, the third year, I actually had to move home and do my third year from home because my anxiety got so bad that I was struggling to actually go to uni, get on the bus. It would take me like an hour to get the courage to go to the supermarket by myself, which sounds ridiculous,
No.
but I just really struggled, and sort of started shutting myself away and not wanting to socialize. Um, it all just got too much. So yeah, I went back home, and my dad, bless his heart, would drive me from Wiltshire to High Wycombe on a weekly basis to do my exams.
Wow.
Um, yeah, So
Gosh, I mean, I think anxiety, the impact of anxiety is so misunderstood. The energy, I mean, I just can't imagine the combination of having a chronic fatigue and all the energy that that doesn't leave you with, and trying to deal with anxiety and how much that demands of your energy to do the smallest things. And I hear so often that it sounds ridiculous, but it's not uncommon that thankfully, some people it's much tougher than others, but people do experience that. It's not ridiculous, and I just think we don't understand it well enough to know how to support people.
absolutely. Thankfully, I think nowadays it's more understood, but obviously back then, you know, how many years ago was that? I don't know, like 20 years ago, it just wasn't a thing. People didn't know what anxiety was. I remember talking to people about it, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's anxiety?" Which is
Right.
crazy because now everyone knows what anxiety is. So that just made it more isolating, if anything.
Right.
Um,
So I
yeah.
interrupted you. So I interrupted you because you talk about uni, but what were you talking about? How it was impacting. So you experienced anxiety anyway, and yes, how it was impacting on your mental health in general.
Yeah. So I think that is partly what I mean, my ME got worse and worse as time went on as well. Because at uni, obviously, I had extremely bad insomnia at university as well. I think that was, I mean, I guess that was probably the ME, but also the anxiety. And I would be waking up on 2, 3 hours sleep, and I just felt a mess. Um, and I think that didn't help my ME at all, the anxiety, because like you say, it's exhausting enough having this illness, but then there's the constant worrying and overthinking. And I just started getting worse and worse. And I just think I'm not surprised that I ended up how I did, because I mean, even now I'm in fight or flight mode constantly. Um, and I know a lot more about those things. So I sort of feel like I've got more tools to deal with it these days. But back then, I actually don't know how I managed to cope with both of those things at the same time.
Were you diagnosed with anxiety then?
Yes, I was. I can't remember when it was, but it was when I was a lot younger.
And did you ever have treatment for that?
I did have CBT
Right.
when I was a lot younger. I think I've had that a couple of times actually. And obviously I've had medication and things like that for it. Um,
And did
I mean,
those make a difference? So CBT, cognitive behavior therapy.
yes. I mean, for me personally, it would help for a time, and then I feel like the anxiety would just sort of come back. And I have quite a few different anxiety aspects as well. So general anxiety, um, I think I basically have high functioning anxiety as well. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. I mean, I used to have not so much these days, but social anxiety. I'm not great in crowds. I actually have something called PMDD, which I don't think is probably very heard of at the moment. It's a hormonal disorder. It's basically like it's like extreme PMS.
Okay.
Um, so again, with that comes anxiety, depression.
Oh,
Some people have suicidal thoughts.
right.
It's that that almost ruined my life, to be honest with you. That aspect of it is under control now with medication, but
Right.
um, and then there's other things like I also have something called trichotillomania, which again I don't think many people probably know, and it's hair pulling. And I was doing that from a teenager as well, um, which is crazy when you think how long that's been going on for. But for me, it would, I mean, with people, it comes out in different ways. But for me, it was eyebrows, eyelashes. So yeah, I just feel like a big ball of anxiety with all these various little things going on. But
So are there people in your life, has there always been, are there people in your life who have really made a difference to your ability to have continued and achieved what you have been able to, given all that stuff you've been dealing with?
Yeah, massively. My parents were huge. They still are, but particularly when I was younger, before I met my current partner, um, they did everything for me, literally. My mum would make my dinners and bring them up to my flat, do all my washing, come round and clean for me. And in the really bad days of my ME, I couldn't even it got to the point where I couldn't socialize, couldn't even go for a coffee. It was just too much.
Mm.
My parents, bless them, would sort of take me out in the car and take me on like a really short little walk and things like that. And I'm very close to my parents, so that that made a huge difference. Also my partner Toby, he, and bless him, he doesn't, people don't know this about him, but he does everything for me. When I say everything, I mean he cooks, he cleans, he, has to do the bigger dog walks. Sometimes physically has to help me, on really bad days, like I need a helping hand off the sofa or up the stairs, or and I don't think people realize that. That's the thing about uh chronic fatigue. You look completely normal.
Yeah.
You'd never know under the mask of makeup and you know how it really is. But he that's why he has to do everything for me. And it's been very hard on him and definitely affected his mental health
Right.
hugely because you know, we've been together almost 10 years, but when we first got together, he didn't really know what chronic fatigue was. Um, so it was very hard in the earlier days for him. Um, and also both of my brothers, so I'm extremely lucky because a lot of people don't have that support network. Um, but my oldest brother Leon, he's actually my boss as well, because I work at Elevate,
Yeah.
and he's the CEO, so he's my boss and my brother, which makes interesting sometimes. But he's been hugely understanding, had his own battles as well with mental health and anxiety, and he, again like me, tends to go and figure things out if he feels like he's struggling with something, and he's a fountain of knowledge with anxiety and mental health, so he's always someone that's really great to talk to if I'm struggling, and also very reassuring as well. And aspects like in the workplace, although he's my brother, I would say I don't feel like he's ever treated me differently from anyone else in the company. But he and the other managers that are here as well will sort of accommodate to an extent, like, even pre-COVID, if I was really struggling, I could work from home, or just having that understanding and being comfortable that you can actually tell someone you have that illness. That makes a huge difference because there's been other jobs when I was younger and you think, I can't say I've got ME. That's sort of like, no way. What would they think? So it's just having that understanding, and the fact that I'm lucky enough to have a family that understands how it really is for me and supports me is, yeah, everything really.
It's so difficult, isn't it, with those sorts of invisible illnesses, whether they're mental or physical illnesses, that it's so easy to feel like you're thought of as being lazy or not really trying or being a princess or whatever. And to have that, you can just see that the environment that you've had has enabled you to thrive and fulfill your ability and make a difference in the world. And if people don't have that, that's really tricky and really sad. So talking about work, so have you had situations where you felt like you couldn't function in that work environment, or come across people who you felt like just make you feel like you need to retreat and can't be you?
Absolutely. I remember in many years ago when I was in my early 20s, I actually worked for H&M. And I think this was actually before I had official diagnosis. And I remember I just got the job and we were having like group training sessions. And there was about 20 of us all sat around a big table. And the manager was, giving her training, telling us bits and bobs. And I was so exhausted. I mean, this is embarrassing, but this is reality. I was sat there, sort of led back in my chair, and I was falling asleep, as in I was that tired, like physically couldn't, when your eyes are going and you're fighting it. And it was like that. And I was like slumped down in my chair a bit. And after the meeting, she called me aside and gave me a stern talking to about, basically assumed I didn't care because I was falling asleep in a meeting, which obviously didn't look great. And there's definitely been occasions where in the past where people haven't understood, and definitely other jobs I felt like I can't say anything. Because particularly years ago, people didn't understand what chronic fatigue was. And I've had people say really hurtful things to me in the past, and you don't forget those things. And it's all in your head. It's a classic one. Oh, you need to do this, or you need to exercise, or
Oh God, yeah, people full of advice.
people love it. But, and obviously some people have good intentions, but other people, they'll just say whatever without really thinking the damage that could actually do. And with an illness like chronic fatigue, exercise and diet change may slightly help some people, but absolutely will do nothing in the long run. So yeah, it's tricky in the workplace, and I am extremely lucky that I have understanding colleagues, and all of my colleagues know about my health. And I used to feel like I couldn't tell anyone about my illness, and I never ever used to talk about it to anybody because anytime I had it was never well received, and I felt quite judged because, again, oh, she's going out and socializing, she's fine. And but you don't see, and like many people, I'm very good at putting on that front of, oh yeah, I'm fine. But what you don't see is when I go home, I'll spend the rest of my day on the sofa, exhausted. Um, so yeah.
So what do employers need to do? If we ruled the world, how do we make, what do you think needs to happen to enable people to be able to be their whole selves and be able to function in the way that works best for them, but obviously also for the organisation that they work with?
It'd just be really nice if employers tried to understand and got their head around the fact that everyone these days has got struggles. Everyone's got struggles, whether it's physical, mental, and just having that little bit of compassion and understanding goes a huge way. Because for me, just knowing that someone's genuinely asking if I'm okay, or
Right.
and it's still to this day, I have my colleagues will say, "Oh, are you doing all right, mate? How have you been?" and things like that, and that means so much to me, just that they care. And I don't want sympathy. I just want people to understand what and what I have to deal with. Um, and I think the small things like that really matter. And just small things like allowing people to maybe work from home on days they're really struggling, because someone with chronic fatigue or even anxiety, if they're feeling so overwhelmed that they feel like they can't go into work, what would that employer rather? Would you rather your employee just doesn't go to work, or they could work from home? So just small things like that. And in the past for me, I struggled with being late for work all the time. it obviously doesn't look good, but it was because I was so tired getting up and ready in the morning, and it still is the hardest part of my day. Um, so just, if someone's 10, 20 minutes late for work, does it really matter? You don't need to discipline someone for that. So I just think employers really just need to get an understanding of mental illness and physical illness as well, long-term illness and invisible illness. I think it's about time that happened. It's a strange world where you feel like you can't say those things to people. And for me personally, in the past, I felt like if I was going for a job interview, absolutely I would never dream of mentioning that I had anxiety or chronic fatigue, because you instantly think, oh, well, I won't get the job because they'll think I can't do it. And that isn't the case, because I've had this illness for 20 odd years. And although work is basically the only thing I can really do, and the rest of the time is my rest period, I feel like I can still come to work and absolutely smash it. So just because someone's got an illness or a mental health problem, it doesn't always mean it has to affect their work. And it's a nice distraction sometimes to people going to work, from those problems, and can help.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes discrimination can actually come from a good place. People can say, "Look, go home, you go home, don't worry, we'll do this." But actually what we need is flexibility and support. How can we help you best be able to deal with this? And I think sometimes I trained somebody a while ago, and I often share this story because it's just so simple, but you can see the impact. So they had somebody who worked with them who had obsessive compulsive disorder, and they knew about it, which, that's a big deal, to be the sort of organization where the culture is that you can have those conversations, big tick straight away.
Yeah.
But what it meant was that when this person was late in for work, they could say, how are you? Are things okay? Because they knew that it might be that they're having such a tough time with their OCD that leaving the house is really difficult. And I just then think, if it wasn't like that, that person might have got to a situation where, oh my God, I'm going to be late again. I can't go in because it'll be twice this week I've been late. I daren't face them, so I better take the day off and come up with some excuse. And then that becomes 3 days, and then you can't get back because your anxiety is so bad and you can't face. And then you leave your, and that person's life can just completely unravel just on the basis that they're not in an environment where they can be honest about what's going
Absolutely.
on. And I think there's often a fear in organisations that if you start to be open about this stuff, that it's going to unravel and everybody's going to want duvet days and everybody's going to be flaky. But my experience, and I've trained many hundreds of businesses now, is that those that are the most open have people who want to stay in their organisations, people who give their heart and soul to the organizations. They might need some flexibility and support, but what the company gets back for that ability to have that flexibility is tenfold, if not more, for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I just really hope that people start realizing this.
Jodi, I do feel hopeful. I think we've got a long way to go, but even listening to you talk about the difference between what your situation was 10 or 15 years ago and how understanding and conversation and language has come on in that time. I think it's really easy to feel like we can't make a difference. But I hearing people's stories, I think, is really powerful, and really, I feel a bit emotional because I think it makes a difference to people. I can put slides up and tell people what the recommendations are for this, that, and the other. But actually, I think understanding people's stories like yours is what people learn from.
I mean, that's nice to hear, because that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, it's obviously illness, mental or physical, is a very personal thing. But I wanted to share my story because it means a lot to other people. Anyone that might see this that's got the same illness as me, or an invisible illness. And there's so many people out there that do. And I've noticed since I've started talking about it, even on my personal social media, I've had people reach out and go, "Oh, I've got this, I've got that," and you would never know. And it's just so nice to know that there are other people out there like that. So yeah, I just want to tell my story, and I hope that other people benefit from it.
I know they will. I'm absolutely sure they will. And with the help, so Jodi works for Elevate. So this Elevate Hub, isn't there, which is what you run, which is the ability for people to come in a hot desk in your
Yeah,
building,
co-working, yeah,
but based in
co-working,
Trowbridge in
and
Wiltshire.
yeah, yes.
And
And
then
there's
you also
also
go on.
Elevate OM, which is Elevate Online Marketing, web design and online marketing company. So I do marketing for both those companies, and I run the hub as well.
So it's Elevate that are helping me do this. So with that in mind, I'm confident that your story will get out there and people will be able to hear it. But I think, you know, you mentioned a bit about how isolated you felt. And, you know, I think particularly with something like anxiety, it shuts your world off, doesn't it? And our ability to get out there and to meet people like we're able to become so diminished. So I feel like if there's a way that we can offer people that sort of human connection, even if it's on a computer screen at this point, I think that's really special. And I have to say, so I've not known Elevate very long. And again, this is really fascinating with the companies that I work with. From the moment I walked in to Elevate, which was only a few months ago, I felt that culture of openness and diversity and just a welcome. And again, I think when companies invest in people and the training and all the skill development and stuff you need, it comes back because people like me want to work with companies that work
Yeah,
in that way. So, you know, it's win-win-win.
absolutely.
Jodi, thank you. I'm
Thank
really
you.
grateful for you doing this. It does take a lot of courage to share your story, but it's been fantastic. So thank you, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Say bye.
Bye.
See you.